Video game boss battles are always cool moments in games for me, whether it's the final boss of the game or one of the earlier boss fights. They're sometimes some of the most memorable things in the game, as they're usually full of spectacle and wonder as you take on a big bad guy in a huge and epic fight. Whether it's a cute and friendly kids platformer with some over-the-top bosses that you have to remember attack patterns in order to defeat them, or maybe you're playing some more adult-orientated titles or a third-person shooter, you can always expect the unexpected with these boss fights, and it's really cool to take them down and test your skills against them. And while some boss fights can be a bit confusing and frustrating due to some bad mechanics, it's always fun to beat the challenge of taking out the boss, and when you finally defeat them, it's very satisfying. But for me, one of the coolest things about boss fights is the epic battle music, and that's why today I'm going to be taking you through my top 5 best boss battle themes of all time. Oh yeah! For me, Tekken is hands down my favourite beat-em-up of all time, and Tekken 3 is probably my favourite one in this series. Now, games of late from this franchise have become kind of notorious, in my opinion, for having some really frustrating and cheap and rather bullshit final bosses, like the Jippinichi fight or the Akuma fight in Tekken 7, or maybe that giant robot that was in one of the Tekkens. They were all just really bullshit and just frustrating to go up against. And for my money, they got it perfect with Tekken 3 and the True Ogre boss fight at the end of the arcade mode. This fight is absolutely brilliant. The stage design is really cool. You're in this sort of temple and it's really dark, and there's lots of flaming torches on the walls to light up the area, and you sort of have a spotlight shining down on the floor where you're standing, where the rest of the floor is kind of in darkness, and it all looks really cool and creepy, and it fits in with the theme and character design of Ogre and True Ogre himself, and the music in this stage really emphasises that, and it's just really intimidating at the start, and it builds up to this sort of epicness of this is the final fight, and I really love this track. I just think it's really cool, and it just really works well for this overall theme of this stage. I think it's kind of the perfect track, and it's always one that I kind of remember. It's just an epic sort of final battle, and the music really helps in that regard, and that's why it's my number 5 pick. My number 4 pick for best boss battle theme of all time goes to one of the tracks in Shadow of the Colossus. Now, this is a game that has an absolutely amazing soundtrack, and there are a lot of songs in this game that I could have easily filled this list with, but for me, there's only really one that really truly stuck in my head, and it's a track that's only used 3 times throughout the game against 3 different Colossus on their second phases of the battle, and it's the revived power track. Now, one of the bosses I remember it vividly from was the Basaran fight during the second phase, as you knock the giant colossi to the floor so you can then climb up him. It's just a really epic track, and it just kicks in at the most perfect time. So as soon as you knock him down by hitting his soles of his feet with the arrows, he will fall over, having been blown over by the pit of steam coming up from the ground, and as soon as he falls, the track just comes on and really kicks the battle into life. It's just a really cool and sweepingly epic song that just plays. The music here is just great, and it really pumps me up that I'm doing something like kind of heroic and just brave, that I'm climbing up this giant creature, risking my life to try and bring back my girlfriend or whoever it was in the game. And it's just so epic, and it just makes you feel really, really fucking cool, and I just love it. It's one that I just remembered throughout the game. It was one that after playing it on the PS2 and then coming away from it and not playing it for years, it's the track that stuck in my head the most, because I just think it's really cool. And like I said, there are a lot of tracks in this game that are really well done and work really well, but for me, this one, the revived power track, that is on the Bastaran fight for the second stage that you're seeing here in the video, the Barber fight for the second stage, and the Quadraz boss. I think it's like the ones with the beard that you climb on, and then I think it's like the second Colossus where you'll hear it for the first time. It's where you have to go down and it's in like a little cave, but it's just a really, really awesomely done track, and I just think it works really well when you're clinging onto a Colossus and you can just hear this track playing. I mean, I'm assuming it's like kind of like violins and stuff like that, but when it really kicks in the ba 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 ba, it's just so cool. And the fact that just what you're playing and what you're doing at that point with the music playing and just blasting out really loudly, it's just so cool, and it's one of the greatest gaming moments for me of all time. And these boss fights are brilliant, and even though the 3 boss fights that you have with this track playing, they aren't the best boss fights in the game, they were really memorable for me, thanks in a very, very large part to the fact that it had this track playing on it. I mean, my favourite one in the game was that flying one when you're in the desert and you have to shoot the sacks, those white sacks underneath it, in order for it to come down so you can jump on it and then it flies around the screen. That was my favourite boss, but because of this track I really enjoyed these 3, and I just think it's really cool. It's a really, really cool track, and I love it. I absolutely love it. Sorry, Colossus, I do feel bad. In at number 3 is Those Who Fight, which is the battle theme music for Final Fantasy VII and its recent remake, and this is just an absolutely epic and sweeping piece of music that just works perfectly for the battle theme, and it's one that could have easily been really annoying considering how much it is used throughout the game. I mean, in pretty much every encounter you have, you will be hearing this track playing, so there was very much a danger that this song would just grate after a while and become annoying. But you know what? After playing through the entirety of Final Fantasy VII Remake and hearing it again and again, I absolutely loved it every time I heard it. As soon as I entered into a battle and that music came on, it would really pump me up and make me ready for an epic fight with whoever I was going against, whether it was just one of the normal Shinra soldiers or one of the bigger bosses and summons that you have to take on. It's just a perfect track for this game, and while I never actually completed the original game, I always remember this theme, and it's one that I can just always hum, and I think that's just a great sign of a really memorable and good track. And I really enjoyed hearing it again, a slightly adjusted version in the remake, because it's just brilliant. And whenever I think of Final Fantasy VII, I always think of this theme, and that is why it's my number 3 pick. In at number 2, and just missing out on the top spot, is Dr. Robotnik's theme from Sonic the Hedgehog 1 on the Mega Drive. So this is probably the oldest track that I'm going to actually have on this list, and it's one that I can still hum note for note to this day. And just like the Final Fantasy VII battle theme, I think that if you can remember a song after all that time, then it's definitely a good sign that it's a really classic track. And this Dr. Robotnik one, I think, is just awesome. It has that sort of fear and dread that it will put into you, because you know Robotnik is coming when you hear this, and I just think it's a perfect sort of track. It's an epic sort of beat. I love the drum bit where it just goes dum 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 dum, and it's just really cool, and it's my favourite of the Dr. Robotnik themes. I mean, they did change it for other games, but I think this is really the only time this version of it was used in a game, and I just think it works really well, whether you're fighting him in the Green Hill Zone, or you're taking him on in Marble Garden, Spring Yard, or Starlight. It always works well for each of those zones. and it's a shame that they mixed it up in the final stage of the game using a different theme, which is also pretty cool. But for me, the main theme for Robotnik in Sonic the Hedgehog 1 is always the one that I will remember the most, and it's the one that I like the most because it's just so cool and so epic, and it just has that sort of evil twinge to it, and this epic sort of, there's a big battle coming, and that's what's my number 2. So my number 1 pick is the duel theme from Metal Gear Solid 1, which is used in all of the boss fights in the game, as it is just a really epic and kick-ass piece of music that will really pump you up for the battles that lie ahead. It's just such a cool and epic theme in my opinion, and I absolutely love it. And just like the previous entries, it's a theme song that I can always just hum throughout the day, even when I'm not playing games and I'm just wandering around the house. I'll sometimes occasionally just start humming this song because it's just such a cool and memorable tune, and I just think it works really well for all of the boss fights. And it's cool that it is used throughout every boss fight, even though it would have been interesting to see a different theme for each of the individual bosses. It's cool that it's a consistent theme throughout, because it always makes you realise you're in for a battle now, and you're prepared for war, and you're just going all out to take down whichever boss you happen to be going up against. And I just really enjoy this theme song because it's just great. Dum dum. Dum, dum, dum. It's just perfect. For me, it's the perfect boss battle theme because it works for every situation. There's so many different varied bosses in this game that the theme song may not have fitted, but somehow it just works for all of them. Whether you're fucking sniping in a sniper battle against Sniper Wolf in the snow, taking on a tank, taking on the giant Metal Gear robot, or driving the Jeep to get out of the tunnel, it just works in all of these different scenarios. It's just really cool. It's a very versatile track that could just work anywhere in this game, and it's just brilliant. I absolutely love it, and I just think it's the perfect boss battle theme. I'd be hard pressed to suggest another one that is better than this and more memorable and just fun, because it's just such a great track, and I just absolutely love it. I think it's brilliant. And there you go, that is my top 5 best boss battle themes in video games of all time. Do you agree or disagree? Let me know in the comments below, and feel free to suggest any ones that you think I should have included, because I'm sure there are some epic battle themes out there that I've forgotten about, but for my money, these are the best of the best, as they are just the most memorable for me, and I really, really enjoy all of them. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this little different sort of video to what I would normally come out with, and thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Cheers.